offering for yes, I'll be recording this. So this is a offering for Dr. Ita Wegman's 150th birthday, and I would like to begin with a Shanti mantra. It's from the Upanishads. I have on the left side in Sanskrit, and then at the meaning in the on the right side. So I'm going to say this shloka, the mantra. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. It's from the Vedas, the Vedantas, the end of the Vedas, and it's the spiritual aspect, the philosophical inner essence of this Vedic literature. And the first line in English is Om, keep me not in unreality, but lead me towards the truth. Keep me not in darkness, but lead me towards the light. Keep me not in the fear of death, but lead me towards immortality, gained by the knowledge of the immortal self beyond death. Om, may there be peace, peace, peace in all the three realms. And Steiner gave a bridge mantra to Ita Wegman on December 24th, 1920. Yes, and I'll read his offering to Ita Wegman. The human being is a bridge between the past and future existence. The present is momentary, the moment as bridge. Spirit turned to soul in matter's shell. It comes from the past. Soul turning to spirit in seed encased. It is future bound. Grasp the future through what has been. Hope for what will become through what is complete. So seize what is in what will be. So seize what will be in what is. And what Ita Wegman, there have been many volumes written about her, and just to define her character, it's going to be in vain. But if you can read those 4 volumes and other books written on her, you'll get an idea as to all the things she has done, and with that you will get an image of her character. And this short few sentences was from the Gertianum newsletter, which was sent yesterday. A pioneer with healing hands. Born in Java in February 1876, she broke with convention as one of the first female doctors of her time. She founded the first anthroposophical clinic in Arlesham in 1921. Here she revolutionized the art of healing with a radical approach, seeing the whole person, not just the disease. This warm-hearted pioneer fought for a form of medicine that united body, soul, and spirit. Her legacy? Clinics around the world now practice her holistic methods. So when I started anthroposophy, I came in late in the game, and I was always felt, there is a Western medicine versus anthroposophic medicine. And when I say Western medicine, I'm not comparing homeopathy, Ayurveda, naturopathy, or traditional Chinese medicine, or Tibetan medicine, and so on. I'm just making Western medicine as a combination of your osteopathic, allopathic medicine, and functional medicine. Okay? And I always had this comparison as this or that, and then I realized after time that it is more, and it's a combination. And you might be familiar with this International Federation of Anthroposophic Medical Association. It's called IVAA. It's in German, and they were formed, and in 23, the World Health Organization published benchmarks for training in anthroposophic medicine, and they have now, you can see it's a federation, it's an alliance between all these various big organizations. So with that as a background, I think now I try to get both in more integrated, and I try to see both because I'm trained in both. And it's really not that we can only see spirit or matter, right? I mean, so I like this verse for the farmer, which was given by Rudolf Steiner, where he says, seek the truly practical material life, but seek it so that it does not numb you to the spirit which is active in it. Seek the spirit, but seek it not in passion for the supersensible. Seek it because you wish to apply it selflessly in practical life, in the practical world. Turn to the ancient principle. Matter is never without spirit. Spirit is never without matter. In such a way that we say, we will do all things in the light of the Spirit, and we will so seek that light of the Spirit that it evokes warmth for us in our practical activities. This matter is never without spirit, and spirit is never without matter, and that's the thing. And so I am integrating, my training together, and it reminds me of walking that middle path, which you all know. And I just put this photograph of the representative of man. There he is walking the middle path, and usually when we say walking the middle path, it's more like a haggle, right? I mean, he says $10 and the other person says 20, so you come to a middle, which is 15. I'm not talking of that middle. It's here. Here, when he's walking the middle path, it's between the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic tendencies. And they're not necessarily polar opposite. In fact, they're not. And we just put the two in the scales of a balance, and it's we must hold the beam in equipoise, right? And when I'm saying integrating, what I'm thinking is the Western medicine can often go in the realm of the material, more in the Ahrimanic side, which is more intellectualization, mathematical concepts, statistics, figures, and this intellectual life without really being suffused with the warmth of my soul, right? So, but at the same time, it's like Christ's third temptation, where he had to answer, right? I mean, how do you make bread out of stone? So in a way, so I have to come to terms with it. I have to use the Ahrimanic, and I'm not going to be a slave of it. It has its place, and I'm going to utilize it, and I'm going to walk. And that's what I wanted to say. That, and for this talk, I got the references from, on the left side, you'll see all the standard Western medicine references. You've got PubMed, Medscape, UpToDate, YouTube. The UpToDate especially is really up to date. And I have the topic I read, migraine, which really, the last time it was updated with the latest and the greatest was January of 2026. And of course, the AI search. On the right hand side, you will see all the archives. And there were a lot of anthroposophic medicine books by Victor Bart, Otto Wolff, Matthias Gerke, and there were a lot of conferences and other my peers and friends and who have given lectures. Like, for example, Dr. Sigvard Elses from Arlesheim Clinic is a neurologist and one of very few anthroposophic neurologists. And all of them, the various seminars I've attended, I'm really indebted to that. they've all provided guidance, pointers, ideas, their experiences shared and spoken to me. And of course, I need to thank those patients who were struggling with migraine and who shared their symptoms, and we talked about it and they guided me. And I would like to also thank my family, Aditi, for bearing with me and helping me with this journey. Of course, the greatest debt is owed to Rudolf Steiner. So I would like to say this AI, which we all talk about, I just want to mention it's I've just expanded as an Ahrimanic influence, and I'm not going to be a slave to it. I'm going to use it, but so I want to give a general preamble in a way. When during this talk, I hope, I pray that you will look at this as a forest is not a tree. Because if you look at a tree, you'll just get stuck over there. I want you to get a general view. And if you look at this tree, you can say, oh, look at the shadow. Is that a human being over there? I can't tell. So we just get caught up with the nuances of looking at a tree. And I want you to look at the forest. In fact, I urge you to look at this as a bigger than a forest, because the forest is also influenced by human activity outside, and so I just look at it more at a macrocosm. Okay, you'll get the whole cosmos involved. Why not? Because that's the reality anyway. So with that, let's go with migraine. This is how I would start if I were in medical school, giving a talk on migraine. So it's a recurrent headaches, attacks, which is not fun at all. But it's often associated with nausea, vomiting, stomach upset, bloating, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. So you can see it's a neuronal dysfunction. It affects sensory system, autonomic system, and the emotional systems. 15 to 20% of the population in any country, any community have migraine. That's about 1.24 billion people. And about all the headaches, if you take all the headaches in the world, 38% of it is migraine. And a big chunk of it is actually muscle tension or a psychological tension headache, which is about 54%. And the tension headache could be from neck degenerative conditions or muscle tension, psychological stress, so many other things. And then about the remaining 8% consists of course, your infections, sinus pains, injury, medication overuse, tumor, very rare, but yes, and of course cluster headaches, and if there is a bleed inside your brain, temporal arteritis, all those. So that's how I would look at it from a Western medicine perspective. Just a taste of how I would look at this page. If I were to see it again from anthroposophic medicine perspective, I would say, okay, I see somewhere there is a relationship between my head, nerves, and I see nausea, vomiting, stomach bloating. So there seems to be some sort of a connection with my gastro, with my metabolic. Yeah. So just teasing it out, while I'm also thinking of the allopathic part as well. And migraine is divided into 4 general stages. Prodrome, which starts sometimes days before the actual headache. Then we have the aura phase, and then we have the headache, the actual headache, and then postdrome, which is after the headache. Not everybody goes through all the 4 stages, and there'll be different things in each stages, and I don't want you to get bogged down with all the details. Just know it's there, and you'll get the recording, so you can always read up on it in detail if you want. The aura can be visual aura, where they start seeing bright lights, or jagged lines and little strange perceptions which are not really there. Sometimes it could be very sensory symptoms like tingling or numbness on the face or limbs, and it can be one-sided. And so you can see how it can be confusing, where people can miss it and think it's a stroke or TIA or something like that. There are also verbal problems, like speech can be impaired, dysarthria, and actual motor weakness also is possible, not just sensory but also motor weakness, sometimes vertigo. And besides this migraine, we have other sorts of migraine, which is vestibular migraine, retinal migraine. Then there are so many other migraines which are there, which are recorded, which are documented very well. There is also a rare migraine called Alice in Wonderland migraine syndrome, which is causes distortions where you start to perceive that your body is getting smaller, shrinking, or the opposite. So if I look at a Western medicine perspective, in particular the prodrome, the initial stage, is more dopamine is involved in that. It heightens our awareness. There is hyperactivation of the dopaminergic system. The aura phase, we have something called a spreading depression. It starts from the back of the head near the occipital area, and then there is a particular rate, so many for every minute, it just moves. There is some sort of a depression in the neurotransmitter activity. It goes from the back, comes all the way to the front. And the headache phase, which I mentioned over here, it's usually unilateral, but sometimes it can be both sides. Throbbing. And at that time, there is a dilatation of the blood vessels. So there is a lot of blood vessels happening. In the aura phase, there is hypoperfusion, less, and in headache, there is excess of blood flow. Okay, and the postdrome is your aftermath, where the perfusion goes down. Again, perfusion, I mean blood supply to the brain. And in up to date, if you go more Western medicine, you got more details and how there is migraine without aura, and what are the criteria, all that stuff, right? Now, if I look at it from Anthroposophic, I'm going to say something which, if you're not familiar, you might think I'm gone crazy, but thinking is not a product, it's not a result of our brain function. Okay, so if you think of wasps doing intellectual thing as a group, or bees collecting and making a hive, or birds migrating, they really don't have that big a brain, but yet they're able to do, right? And if you have ever heard of near-death experiences, when they're brain dead, people are reporting after they come back what they saw, what they perceived. And consciousness is in a way independent of brain activity. I mean, brain activity follows conscious activity. Okay, so to be conscious, our thoughts have to be imprinted on the brain. So when that happens, you have in the nerves the action potential, and then the neurotransmitters are released. There's going to be breakdown, and the thought process and the brain activity, when it gets involved, it's a death process. Okay, it's important to know that it's a death process. The moment our thought enters, it becomes fixed. It's a finished thought consciousness. It's no longer living in your imagination, inspiration. It's no longer in your dream state. You're awake, you're there. And what happens in aura is the brain actually starts to make the consciousness occur, and so you it starts to act on its own. So it start hallucinating. It'll start seeing things which are not there, for example, perceptions with no basis of reality. Okay, that's the anthroposophical understanding of aura. Okay, what are the triggers for migraine? You got emotional stress 80% of the times, change in hormones in females 65% of the time, emotional stress causes exhaustion. It's not necessarily always during exhaustion. Even when you're resting, relaxing after stress, that can also precipitate. Before menses begin, there is a sudden drop in estrogen and even progesterone. That change in that rhythm, it's not the number, it's a change in the number which changes the rhythm, that precipitates a migraine attack. Even during ovulation, there is a dip in the hormone level, and that can also cause migraine. Estrogen sensitizes the pain receptors, and so that's another reason why hormones play a role in females causing the pain. Sometimes when they have severe abdominal cramps during periods, and if for some reason they've had a hysterectomy done, the pain seems to go to the brain as migraine. Right? Okay, so not eating properly and not eating on time, changing the rhythm, also is a trigger. Certain foods like cheese, chocolate, maybe fermented foods. People are different, so it depends on who is getting a migraine. I mean, so even sauerkraut, soy sauce, kimchi, of course, alcohol can trigger, smoking can trigger. Coffee sometimes helps and sometimes can trigger. Also, dyes and MSG additives can also cause, nitrates can cause, can precipitate. Odors, yes, and sleep disturbance. Again, you can see the change in rhythm also can precipitate a migraine. Exercise, food, yeah. PTSD also makes one more sensitive to getting an attack. Okay. So if you really think about it, I mean, all this thing, I mean, I have a very high chance of getting a migraine. So how do I look at it? How does one look at these things and say, anthroposophically, if you want to ask a question, the question would be to a patient suffering from migraine: why are you getting a migraine? Is there a meaning? Can we? It's not a mistake that we have to get over as soon as possible, but what message is this sending to me? What is the what do I have to do with this? Is what karmic, perhaps? What is my question? What is my mission? What is the reason for getting this migraine? It's something to contemplate on, right? And usually the constitution of people who get migraine are very intellectual, maybe too much for that individual. They they have a fast processing of perceptions, and they have a strong mental presence. They have special gifts. They multitask. If I have to depend on that person, I know that person is going to take care of the job because that person is really good at making sure it's done. So perfectionist, somebody who overextends with too many responsibilities. Yeah. So being aware of that helps. Can I control my constitution consciously? Can I shift? When I know I'm going to be doing all this, can I be aware? I think being aware, it helps. Maybe I can diffuse it. when it's coming. I can maybe turn it off so I'm not going to be a victim all the time, right? And Dr. Sigvard Elses for the Clinic Arlesham, he said he has migraine, and he said that a special person is honored to get migraine. So I cannot say that, but he said it. And he said that sometimes when you really get rid of migraine completely, they lose their gifts, or it tones down. If I were to be a hardcore Western medicine kind of guy, I would look at, say, for example, a phenomenon of this magnet attracting all these ion filings. I would say, okay, what are the properties of the magnet? What is the chemistry? What is the physics? Different alloys of iron. Maybe if that changes it. I would go in the microscopic thing, look in the structure. I'll do all kinds of experiments. I'll find out if there is any molecular structure or anything special about the atoms. And basically I'm going microcosm, you see, going into it, focusing only on that. And you start using it without knowing fully how it works. And Steiner gave this in 1923. It's a Mercantile Inspiration. And he said, when you go to the spiritual world consciously as an initiate or a clairvoyant, he said, this is what you're going to hear, or you're going to feel this verse. This it is which shows itself to us as an admonition from the spiritual world in the brazen letters that grow into enigmatic words, but that can be understood precisely out of the conditions of our present time. What is it? O man, thou moldest it to thy service. Thou revealest it according to the value of its substance in many of thy works. Yet it will only bring thee healing when to thee is revealed the lofty power of its spirit. And he's talking about iron. And he's saying, let us learn to know iron and equally all other substances, not merely in terms of its material value. Let us learn to know them in their majestic spirit power. Then there will be human progress once again, progress for the earth. And that is what we must will if we want to be a human being in the true sense of the word. Okay, now as a Western medicine researcher, I'm going to take all the things which the symptoms told by the patient, the precipitating factors, and now thinking like a magnet, and these are the things, key players. Okay, I'm just focusing, all right? And now I'm going to go microcosmically. So I'm going to do all kinds of experiments, figure out, it's got to be the head. Hello, it's a headache. So what's happening? And then I'm going to go detail, and I'm going to do all kinds of chemical analysis. And I've done PhD, I've done research for 10 years. So I know how it can be very, very short-sighted. And well-meaning people. I mean, it's nothing to do with the people. It's just, that's the nature of studying microcosmically without, so, all this various alphabets you can see over there. And based on all the research, I'm going to focus on one of the main ones, which is called the CGRP. It's a calcitonin gene related peptide. So I'm going to get some biochemistry in here. I hope you don't mind, because if I don't, my biochemistry professor is going to punch me. This looks like a punching glove anyway. So imagine that as a trigeminal nerve terminal. It's one of the cranial nerves involved in migraine. It's the end of the nerve, so nerve terminal, and all those circles you see, there are 4 big circles. Those are like balloons inside the cell, and the small circles are like various neurotransmitters, okay? And it could be substance P, the CGRP, which we are talking about now. So many things possible, okay? And let's see that there is another nerve terminal, just wearing another boxing glove, right? And then vascular smooth muscle cell, which means it is a muscle surrounding the blood vessel. So if you stimulate it, it starts to contract, so the blood flow diminishes because it's contracting, making the size of the lumen of the blood vessel small. Okay. And now there are certain receptors which are like locks, right? You need to have the right key to unlock it so that they, once they're on the surface of the cell over here, and once the key goes in and unlocks it, then inside there will be release of various chemicals which leads to changes within. So for example, when there is the headache phase, the 4 balloons, right, they come slowly to the surface and then they break open and then they're released. And we're going to focus only on CGRP protein. And what I've written CGRP on the vascular smooth muscle cell on the other nerve is the receptor, right? And so those keys, the small round, are going in and they go into the right spot and then they unlock it, and then inside the cell you're going to have all kinds of reactions which causes pain, muscle degradation, protein getting released into the system, and vasodilation. Because CGRP causes vasodilation, it relaxes the vascular smooth muscle. Okay. And then, so based on that, so what are the treatment? Western medicine treatments is divided. I'm going to show the first and the second one. It's called triptans. Is a group which has got so many different triptans. You might have heard of it. Sumatriptan is one of them. And then there is ergot. Those two, how do they act? They act on these receptors, 5-HT, and they block the, once they act on 5-HT, they prevent those balloons from going into the edge of towards the edge of the trigeminal nerve terminal. And they also act on this 5-HT on the vascular smooth muscle cells. So they cause constriction of the blood vessel and they prevent CGRP from being released. Okay, that's how they work. I know it's a little bit of biochemistry, please bear with me. And the next one is, once let's say the CGRP is released, then they have this second set of third one actually is called GPANTs, GEPANTs. They block the locks, so the key can't get into that, right? And so you can release all the CGRP you want, but nothing's going to happen because GPANTs have gone and then they have closed it. Then the fourth one is monoclonal antibodies. These antibodies go and specifically mop up the CGRP which are released. And so there is no CGRP over there. And so the CGRP receptor is not activated, so there is no pain. So it really makes logical sense, the various methods of treatment. It's not like one lab discovered all this. It's just like there are multiple labs. They work only on one particular molecule or a chemical or a DNA or protein, and another one works with another, and then they come with independently discovering. And CGRP seems to be one of the key ones here. Then there is a fifth one, which is it's a Botox basically. And so what Botox does is it prevents the release of all the neurotransmitters. And so Botox is another way of blocking the pain. And then we have a special 5-HT, which is called 1F. It's a different type of receptor, and to that, this DTANs are the things which act on it. This creates cross bridges so that balloons cannot go to the edge. Okay, so we have all the different products really for the treatment of your migraine. So when there is an acute pain, the treatment strategy from a Western medicine perspective is, first one is behavioral. So basically it'll be when you sense it, when you feel you're getting it, it need not be aura, could be even pre-drome, maybe something's happening, something's weird, then immediately go rest, stop the triggers, less physical activity, immediately go to a dark place, quiet place, cool place, maybe guided relaxation, biofeedback, just manage themselves. And sometimes it aborts right there. However, if we cannot control by the behavioral alone, when there is an acute migraine attack, there are these pharmaco options, right? NSAIDs are like your ibuprofen, diclofenac, and naproxen. And some people, it gives benefit, and they just take it and it goes away. And if you take it for a long period of time, I never talked about the side effects. I mean, if you talk about side effects, we'll never end this lecture. So it comes with its own side effects. So we got to be mindful of that. Sometimes acetaminophen or a combination of the first two or any combinations people have tried. And then we talked about all the triptans, gepants, the antagonists, detans, and ergot, right? All of those are there, and the way you select is depends if it is something which someone gets immediately, like after getting an aura, or if they have a heart problem, then you use a different. You select based on the side effect profile mainly, and how quickly you want it to go away. And so there is also intranasal route medications can be given intranasally as well. And some of them are safer during pregnancy. Some are approved for pediatric population. And let's say these up to ergotamine, we didn't work, then comes the big guns. You start using steroids and metoclopramide, chlorpromazine. I mean, this all usually you go to the ER and nothing seems to work, and then you give strong medications, basically anti-seizure medication. There is also neuromodulation, which are just safer. Generally, they are, for example, the first one on the left, A, which says A, is your cephaly. It's a band like thing. You put it around your forehead. It has an electrical. It gives an electric stimulation. Some people say it causes pain, and then you can adjust the strength of it, and based on that, you can start off. Initially, you get used to it, and after a while, you don't even feel it. And so that's one way. It stimulates some of the branches of the trigeminal nerve, and it keeps your pain at bay. And that's one effective method. It can be expensive. I think it's about $600, and then once you have it going, it'll be about $20 to $25 a month. Which for some people, the pain is so severe, they're probably okay with it if it works for them. Then we have this stimulator for the vagus nerve on the second, and it's not an invasive, it's just on the outside. That's also very expensive. The cephaly is the least expensive. Then you have this, you can put contraptment over here, and it gives electrical impulses. This is the third method. This is also very expensive. And then the fourth one is your magnet treatment, transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's been there for more than a decade. It's been approved, I think, 2009. maybe. Anyway, so that one helps. And now they have adapted just for migraine. You just rent it and you pay monthly and go. That works as well. So that's for the treatment when you have an actual pain. Now, when you want to prevent it, what are the things you can do? So again, we divide into behavioral. Basically, you talk to the patient about having improve their adherence to medication, because this is not a cure, right? I mean, from Western medicine perspective, and so this treatment will go on for lifelong. So people tend to forget taking their medication. So you educate them, and also there is medication overuse. Talk about the side effects of the medications. So sometimes you have to, based on their preference, you have to change, go back and forth. You have to talk about alcohol, smoking. If they have hypertension, that's another thing we need to address, because the medication can worsen their hypertension. So it has to be, and also cause heart attacks. So you got to be careful about that. Also oral contraceptive pills and sleep hygiene, well-balanced meal, have a schedule, regular exercise, limiting caffeine intake, exercises, relaxation, have a headache diary, food diary, all those things to improve the behavior or modify the behavior so the frequency of attacks is less. And when it comes to medications, pharmacotherapy, here we use antihypertensives, antidepressants like venlafaxine, right, amitriptyline, and they all come with beautiful side effects, and we got to be careful. So just have to play around this. Anticonvulsants, sodium valproate, gabapentin, and then you have the CGRP blockers, Botox. You go regularly, get injections every few months or weeks, and you won't know if they're in pain because they will have no facial expression. And all this strange medications. CoQ10, riboflavin, magnesium also are used to reduce the frequency of attacks. For prevention, using neuromodulation, the transcranial magnetic stimulation works. It's a slow pulse you give at the back of your head and on the occipital region. You do it every day, once, twice, usually once. And the same thing with your cephalate. You can do it for an hour every day. Depends on how much you can tolerate, and it's easy. You just put it on, and then you can do your day-to-day activities. You won't even know it's there. You're like, oh yeah, after a while. So all this, the reasoning, the evidence, the data, the belief in this is all really standing. These are the pillars: American Medical Association, the Headache Society, NIH, all of them. This, what you see in the background, is your NIH building in Bethesda, Maryland. So that is where it's getting its strength, right? I mean, that is the source, that is the core. This group of well-meaning scientists, really, and they all, feel anthroposophy is a pseudoscience, and they also say acupuncture is a pseudoscience. If you look at Wikipedia, 37 times you see acupuncture is a pseudoscience, and similarly for our anthroposophic medicine. So pharmaceutical companies, everything, they're very rich, powerful, unfortunately very materialistic, I would say. They would say only that is the only way to go about it. And they believe they know everything. And I don't know, you must have seen some of the doctors you've faced who seem to have this godlike complex that they know everything. And they have reason to say that, right? I mean, before 100 years ago, the life expectancy was age 40. Now it's almost double, all because of great science. Right? So that's their reasoning, and that's understandable. And then we have Socrates, who said, "I know nothing." Right? And the great Isaac Newton said, "What we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean." And Einstein said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." And Deepak Chopra said, "Modern medicine, for all its advances, knows less than 10% of what your body knows instinctively." I mean, he didn't even say about what is around. He just said only what your body knows instinctively. And I want to share the Steiner quotes. If we do not believe within ourselves this deep-rooted feeling that there is something higher than ourselves, we shall never find the strength to evolve into something higher. It is dreadful that people today want to grasp everything with the intellect. In medicine, really nothing can be grasped with the intellect. With the intellect, one could, at the very most, grasp the diseases of the minerals. Everything medical must be grasped by direct perception, and the faculty for this has to be developed. So you can see it's a lot of work. It's different from the way we approach regularly your Western medicine approach, where I depend on my five senses. And I'm going to look only where there is light, because I cannot rely on the dark areas, right? Because I cannot see. I cannot use my senses. I can't see, so it's not there. Until something comes about later to discover, right now, this is all I can do. And with this, I'm getting a result. So why? There is already so much complications. So, I mean, so much to know already. Where is the time for something else, right? And so we need to go out to the threshold, a little bit beyond the edge of the light. At least walk towards the edge, right? One example of a threshold could be, I'm going to give an example. Examples are never really the real things, right? In languages, sometimes when you translate from one language to the other language, the meaning doesn't come through. So I don't know if that's a good example, but it's an example of where we're reaching a threshold where we cannot really understand, right? And another way could be you're heating a milk and you're just at a low temperature where it is just simmering, but you have to increase the temperature. You got to push for it to boil. See, I cannot give a simple answer. Okay? This keep it simple, stupid, this KISS method is really common and very used these days. And I want to counter that. And I want to use Rudolf Steiner's quote, which says, the things that are given esoterically do not always exist to make life as easy as possible for us. But in a certain way, the opposite applies. They are indeed also there to make life more difficult for us, to make us realize the difficulties of understanding the world, of really getting to know the world and human being, so that when we become alive to these difficulties, we take the opposite path of development to the one which is so often pursued in our culture. We take the opposite to a superficial path of development. By becoming alive to these difficulties existing as between the outside world and the human being, that a person can be deepened in soul. So coming back to that magnet once more, I'm really attracted to the magnet. So a magnet needle, this is Steiner quoting again, magnetic needle always points with one end approximately to the north. We look for the cause not in the magnetic needle, but in the whole earth. anyone who looked in the magnet needle itself for the cause of this peculiar position it takes up would be talking nonsense. So we need to look at the whole earth to understand the magnet, this phenomena of magnetism. And when you go, this is the earth, you can see there are three lines, A, B, and C, A1 on top and A2 in bottom, like that. So the A is the geographic poles, A1 north and A2 south, and the C represents the magnetic north-south, right? And then there is a geomagnetic poles too. And when you look at this earth, it's surrounded by atmosphere. The air is constantly moving, and the movement is because of the heat. It could be heat coming from the cosmos, or even heat from inside the earth, but it's mostly from the sun and the cosmos. And the sun gives heat, gives light, light which carries color. You also have UV, ultraviolet rays. And Steiner says it gives so much more which we cannot perceive. And this UV light, for example, is used by plants to convert water and carbon dioxide to make oxygen and starch. And this oxygen is in the atmosphere. The ozone layer also has oxygen, yeah, 3 molecules. And this oxygen is absorbed by coal deposits. And in a way, it regulates the oxygen level. And one could say, and Steiner did say, that this is how Earth is breathing. And this oxygen, which is dependent on the cosmos for heat, for example, for movement and everything, all the cycles I'm talking about, from the cosmos, that oxygen is going all the way when I breathe in, all the way to my individual cell. Right? I mean, can you imagine how the cosmos is influencing me? Right? So I have to stretch my imagination. I go to the threshold. I don't want to be in the light. I got to look outside. Take a poetic license, you know. And if you do this, there'll be many thresholds alongside where I can walk. And every once in a while, and of course, as you keep reading Rudolf Steiner lectures, you get more and more in face with those thresholds. And every once in a while, you get that aha moment, which is so good. And it's something which you have to work by yourself. It is, and Rudolf Steiner says many times, not to take his word just like that in faith. Those days are done. We have to consciously, we have to see for ourselves, see if it makes true within ourselves, and only then believe it. Of course, you can't experiment everything. I mean, I can't go dig in the earth to see if there is a, you know, but see if it makes sense. I mean, in our regular natural science, we cannot see electricity. We just see the effects of it. We don't know there is black hole. Nobody has been there, but we know, we believe, right? I mean, so if it makes sense to you, right, and only then believe it, and that is very, very difficult. And which path am I going to take? And this is always, you know, which the road less traveled. And if I really look at this picture, I feel I don't want to take either of the roads. The green looks so attractive, so nice. The plant. The plant nature has spoken to the heart of man throughout the centuries. The glory of color with the flowers and the leaves, and man would listen to it in the past. And it is by virtue of its form that the plant reveals itself. Its specific character comes to expression beautifully in the flower, right? And this plant which gives us joy, it's the form, right? And which keeps changing. It is not fixed. It is the transient aspect of their being. And with time, same plant changes its form, and still we can recognize it. You look at the bare earth sometime, you don't see anything, just grains of sand, and in the middle you have a seed. And then, you know, seed is springing forth, when the sun is high in the sky with water to help it. And if you look at this germinating seed, and have you wondered if this seed which is germinating is it something which is using a lot of force and pushing itself like with pointed arrows, or is it, how is it coming, or is it something which is pulling it? Is the plant defying gravity? It seems to be coming slowly up and defying it and moving towards the cosmos, reaching the cosmos. There is something from the cosmos which is pulling the plant. There is some attractive force from outside, from the firmament, if you will. Forces from the infinity, and the plant is moving towards that. Just like our magnet, we have all these iron filings which are attracting the line. When you talk about it in physics, you say the rays move from North Pole to South Pole on the outside, and then from South Pole to North in the inside to finish that loop. And when you are stuck to it, it's difficult to move. You're kind of stuck. It's not impossible. You use force, you can move it around. This is different from a gravitational attraction where you cannot escape it unless you go on escape velocity, but you cannot escape it, but you can walk around it, right? You don't need that much energy to walk or move. And so we cannot see gravity or magnetic rays, but we can experience the effects. And clairvoyants who can see the etheric forces, and I'm not, but if a clairvoyant, some initiate like Rudolf Steiner were to say, and if I understand it, and if it makes sense to me on the inside, I don't need to rediscover it. I can now take it as granted, move to the next phenomena. I don't need to prove Pythagoras' theorem every time. I already had it first time, and then I'm moving on. So once it makes sense to me, it's like that with Steiner. You move on, and did get one after the other, and it's a process. You have to work towards it. And coming back to this plant, you see the leaf as it's unfolding. It's forming. It's going in a plane. There is a plane as opposed to a point. If it's a stone, you go to the center of gravity, and that's how you represent. That's the point. But here, the leaf, more than the thickness, it's the surface area which is important. The morphological gesture for leaf is a plane. This is horizontal. It's tangential to the earth. And when you look at a field, or actually if you look at a still water in a lake, you can get a sense for it. And then you have many parallel lines. And then you can see as the leaf is growing, you can get a sense of buoyancy, a sense of lightness, right? And then the water from the ground reaches all the way to the tip of the leaf. And then the leaves are growing up, but the branches are going higher and higher, reaching the cosmos. And when you think it cannot reach anymore, it produces flowers with fragrances which still can reach further. It's actually they're going up. I'm just saying how an anthroposophist would look at it, right? Instead of looking at the leaf tip and saying, okay, what are the, microscopic, right? Dividing. And have you wondered how a seed, which is very dry and contracted, you hold a seed in your hand, then you put water, it's contracted, you put water, and in the earth, you can see it expand into a leaf with time. And then it contracts again into the calyx, which is the green part of the flower bud. Then it expands for the second time, like with the flower. and then it contracts again into pistils or stamens, and then it expands into a fruit, and finally it comes down to a seed. So this threefold rhythm of expansion and contraction, if you have not heard it before, this is given by who does that? Who can think like this? Which natural scientist of today thinks that way, right? It was given by Goethe, and Wilhelm Pelikan is one of Steiner's actual student from 1920, I think around that time onwards. And this is what he said about Goethe. He said Goethe's theory of metamorphosis is the foundation stone in the study of life. It does not, however, provide a medical botany because it takes no account of the essential relationships between plant and human being, which are the only basis for such a science. These relationships have been discovered and presented by Rudolf Steiner. And you might have heard of Denis Klochek, very famous anthroposophist, and there is this movie called The Challenge of Rudolf Steiner. It's about 27 videos. They interview 27 different people, and then they have it's a movie, right? It's about an hour long, and he's talking about Goethe in this, and Goethe is spelled as G-E-R-T-A, but that's the Google translation. And he says used Goethe as a kind of a ladder to come down into the world. That there was something in the vision of Goethe, of the organic nature of the vision, that allowed Steiner's cosmology in him to come down and meet the plants and minerals. And there was the kind of incarnation process. So Goethe is reaching out, is the genius Goethe, best a man can be, I guess, at that time. And he's reaching out, and then Steiner is using that, whatever he had developed, and from above he is bringing it to us. And if you look at this, it's a Coppola Productions. It's a great Challenge of Rudolf Steiner. If those who have seen it, you would really enjoy it. And you see how there's only 2.1 thousand subscribers. But if you want to see Keeping Up with the Kardashians, we have 2.9 million subscribers. This path we are taking in the anthroposophic medicine is a lonely path. Now I want to bring metamorphosis, which is a very important concept. I'm trying to give a foundation so that we can understand migraine from an anthroposophic perspective, and metamorphosis is important to understand. This is a tomato plant. It's a cartoon. 09 is the 9th day, and then 89 would be 89th day. And then you can see between first 9 days you have one leaf, and then the next 9 days you got one leaf. Now we have 3 leaves, yeah. And then 10 days later we have about 12 leaves, and then after day 30 you would think day 40, and day 50 you would expect even more, right? I mean, the way it's progressing, 1 to 3 to 12, huge. But then you see after day 50 to 59, the plant is not logarithmically growing. Its height seems to have reached a plateaued out, right, in a way. What happened to that force which was there, which was growing? That growth forces, what happened to it, right? It is being used, it is channelized, it is metamorphosed to have the flowers. You can see here flowers, and then later to fruits. And that transformation is the metamorphosis. And a lot of energy which could have been for growing the leaves is being used to make the flowers, right? And in humans too, you can see those changes happening, the change of the teeth at age 7, changes that occur in puberty, and even the height of a human doesn't go on forever. After age 18 or 19 it stops, and then that energy force is used to maybe grow the child's brain, to mature it. a metamorphosis occurs. Okay? And he gives the explanation, or he gives the example of this locust tree on the left side, left top. It's a Robina pseudoacacia. He says if the leaves of this plant are cut where they join the petioles, then there will be a metamorphosis. That truncated leaf stalk becomes blunt and knobby and takes over the function of a leaf, turns green in color. And then there is something inherent in the plant itself which is doing this. And this force is within the whole plant. And then if you look at this one below the bonsai, I mean, that by constantly trimming it, you've changed the nature of the plant. And these are just examples. And the third one, where this plant is growing at the edge of a cliff, and now it's not conducive for the plant to grow comfortably. It has to modify it. That modification, the metamorphosis is occurring. It seems to one of the stem is curving around, and then it's becoming an organ of support. The leaves which would have come from that stem are gone. It's not there. Sometimes they're dwarfed, and now this plant has a supporting base. In spite of magnificent achievements, it has not been possible to solve the riddle of how a plant could develop a medicinal relationship to the human beings. Why in nature do we have all this living things and even minerals? How come they are helping us medicinally, right? I mean, science cannot answer that. And Rudolf Steiner explains it how it does spiritually. And then for this he says how we can compare a human with a plant. And you might have seen this figure where on the left side you see the human being, and then the right side you see a plant which is inverted, just like the root can go into the earth and absorb everything, right? And similarly the brain does the absorbing of things. So you can sort of see a resemblance, and you can see a resemblance in the leaf part and your lungs where you're breathing, and you have the respiration in the leaves. And you can see the fruit and the flowers, the fruit where is the metabolism happening, right? Storage of glucose into starch, breakdown, all that stuff. So it compares to the metabolic and legs of the human being. So just keep that in mind. And then Rudolf Steiner was the first person to suggest that medicinal plants tend to develop one part or part of a process to excess in a plant, right? And making it the main feature, right? So you can, how often can you see that, a part wants to be the whole, it just seems to proliferate, it just dominates the picture, and other parts are reduced to a minimum. So this archetypal or the regular plant is distorted, and there are different plants which something else shines, if you want to call it. And Steiner says if you understand this distortion has occurred, we can perceive the direction in which the plant's medicinal properties go. And this provides the basis for a rational medical botany. See, that's an important point which Steiner brought about. And if you think of an example of a carrot, it's very thick, fleshy, it's rich orange color or reddish hue, which matches the vibrant color of the sunrise and sunset, right? And it's a root, so you can imagine how the root will help the brain. And so it's good to give it to kids, especially when the brain is growing, root vegetables, and also the people who are getting a little bit older as well. So I would it'll be very helpful for them. It helps their brain. You can also see how in the metabolism, in the sense there is a storage of sugar, and you have this colorful, right? I mean, the sunlight is in the carrot. So if you consume the carrot, and the carrot in your stomach and your intestine, it's bringing light over there. Can you see it being transformed? And this light is good for getting rid of parasites which like darkness. So for worms, you can use carrots as a treatment. So I hope you're getting an inclination of how we're understanding nature, and we are able to see the usage of getting remedies from them. It's not trial and error method. It's actual reality. What about animals? I mean, if you look at the human zygote, for example, and then it's getting into the 8th cell stage as it keeps dividing, and then it becomes a stage, next stage, and it keeps going. And here we are ending at gastrula, and as you continue, you get the whole baby, right? And similarly for other animals too. It goes through these stages. And gastrula is an important stage for all animals. It's where the indentation occurs and the air element is put into the whole embryology. And if you take at the 8th cell stage, if you take one cell, you'll get, if you remove it, separate it out, you'll get a baby. So it's possible to have 8 babies, right? I mean, you've heard of women who are having in vitro fertilization and they have 8 babies. But if you go to lower animals, you can go further out in the embryology stage, and then you can make divisions or cuts, and then you can see the lower animals growing back. For example, here you can see a starfish. You cut off one of its legs, it regrows. And the scientists also regrew a frog's leg over here. So animal seems to be drawing its internal formative force and then rebuilding something. Okay? And Steiner says, in man, you will have to conclude that these do not happen, right? I mean, you cannot cut off a finger and then expect it to regrow. So what happens to these forces which were there in the lower animals, growth forces, what happens in humans? Where is it? And then he says, if you observe nature with this inquiry, now you're going to get a connection between physical and the spiritual, because he says the forms, the forces which were there is being used by man for other reasons, other causes. He says those forces have been lifted off, and it comes from each and every organ. Like the lung has those forces of regrowing and all this. It sacrifices it. All the organs, they sacrifice it so that these forces are now become used by soul and spirit for its activities, like to think, to feel, and to will. And then when you're thinking, you can get an idea and get another idea and then link them. Or you have an idea, you can break it, move it aside. So all those things is possible because of these forces. Right? And he says, take an example of a lung. Here he says, we shall find that we have drawn away formative principles to augment our soul and spiritual powers. If we discover among the products of the vegetable kingdom the exact forces which we drew from the lung, and then we reintroduce it when the lung system is off in a human being, those forces are now able to restore the organ's activity. And that is the way you get an inkling of how anthroposophic remedies work. This is Rumi's quote. I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on to become what I don't understand, His holy breath. Now we're getting closer towards migraine. We want to understand the fourfoldedness and the threefoldedness of a human being. To get a complete idea of a human being, just the material physical body is not sufficient. You see a body made up of body, soul, and spirit, and the body, we can see it in terms of space, where the actual cells, and then how it changes with time, which gives life, and then growth and maturity. So you have the physical body, the etheric body, the soul body, and the spirit body. As anthroposophists, you're all aware of it. Briefly, physical body belongs to the mineral realm, and in the mineral realm, it's all dead, right? There is no creation of life happening. It's just dead mineral material substances, which you can see and feel and touch and do physical and chemical experiments on it. It is subject to gravity, so it goes down, and it goes to a lower level of energy following your thermodynamics. But if you think of a living organism like a plant, it seems to grow in the opposite direction. It takes, again, it goes against gravity. Even the water rises against gravity. All the substances are grown, and as long as you think of your famous apple, which fell on Newton's head, the apple had to reach the top, so the etheric forces had to work to take these substances, and then they modify it, and they refine them, and they direct them what to do where, and when it's not needed, when it's dead, that's when the apple can fall down. And that's the etheric body, which is the water realm. And in fact, if you go to look for life on other planets, they look for water, right? This etheric forces need a medium, and that's water. It organizes your physical body, and all living beings have the etheric body or the water. So what is happening is these plants, which have the etheric body along with other living beings, the plants especially, they're trying to find autonomy in the environment by going against gravity. It's a way of getting autonomy. And then we have the third realm, the third body, astral body, which we have in common with the animals. This can be understood best if you think about a sleep state and an awake state. When I'm asleep, or in a coma stage, I'm in a vegetative state, right? That's what they say. When I'm awake, I'm conscious now. I'm aware of, I can think, I can process, I can have a feeling, I can do some actions. And this is because of the astral body. It organizes your etheric and physical body. And now this is what animals have. Animals have the physical, the etheric, and the astral body. And now it is also trying to be more autonomous, and it sacrifices its ability to grow tall, metamorphoses that, and is more horizontal. And now it can walk or jump or crawl or even fly. So it's getting a little bit more autonomous, more freedom. And this capacity of moving is inseparable from that of feeling. So this feeling of sympathy, antipathy, the polar, and anything in between, all of that is belongs to the astral realm. It's also called the soul body, and it involves the gastrulation, which we saw in the embryology, where there was a ingrowth during embryological development, where the air element is added, the stomach, the mouth, the alimentary canal, all the way the colon, everything is part of that gastrulation. And now the ego, the fourth body, it belongs to the warmth realm. It's on a spiritual level, it's like, who am I? And when the I organization works on the physical level, it's more about making my individual physical body uniquely mine. For example, I have blood group, or even all the antibodies, or the immune system is extremely personal, just mine, right? So that is your ego. The force which comes from that makes us stand upright. It gives us metamorphosis, our energy for speech and for thinking. It's not, when you're born you don't have all those things. We have to be taught, and that is all the I organization, the ego. It is a way of being conscious of your own consciousness, a meta consciousness, being self-conscious. So these are the four realms: physical body, etheric body, astral body, and the ego. And if you look at human being, you also see, you can see him in another method, another way, which is like from his form and function. You can say there is two polar opposites, and this structural polar opposites from the head and the abdomen and below, and then there is a united, they're united, there is a in between, a rhythmic, there's a harmonizing element. And so these three form the threefold human, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. And just like, when you're talking of motion, we have Newton's laws of motion, and you have Einstein's theory of relativity, and both are related to movement, and both can exist at the same time. It's just an example, don't hold it against me. I'm just saying how to be looking at it more macrocosmically. And the threefold man is, when you look at the different regions of the physical body, you get that polarity. Like I said, there is a higher and the lower part of the organism, right? If you look at the skull, for example, you can see it's round in shape. And if you look at the fingers at the very end, it's radial and straight, and it's going outside. So there is circular inner, and then there is a centrifugal going outside. Get that radiating structure of the hands and the legs. And then the uniting part, which is in the middle, which is the lungs and the heart, and then the rib cage, which has both a vertebral body which is more circular, and the ribs are more radial, right? And it's not just the anatomical structure, but physiology and everything. As you work with it and see, you can see it is a threefoldedness can be seen. And the head end, or the nerve sense system, the cephalic pole, the nerve sense system is where you get a lot of absorption. You have all light, sound, what we eat, everything is coming from the upper part. And then the lower part, we have the movement of the limbs, and food being digested, and the moving of the food is also motion, right? And all the exchanges which happen, secretion, excretion, all of them are, and the muscles of the digestive apparatus, all of them are movement which are happening. And the rhythmic system is an in-between. And then you can say the nerve sense system, you need that to address the thinking. The willing is addressed by your metabolic limbic system, and your feeling is addressed by your rhythmic system. Okay? And this is a rough approach we can take, and we need to be a little fluid. It can be fixed. You have to be having some sort of an active way of thinking if you really want to understand man. If you make it systematized and then make it dryly intellectual, it's going to be difficult. And so now, to nudge you in the direction of migraine, because understanding this is important, the threefold man and fourfold, but now when we go to the metabolic system, we talked about exchange of substances. You also see that's where you're getting a lot of energy and vitality with all the food we are eating. It's also a place where there is a lot of cell multiplication happening. You imagine the inside of your gut is always being cell is always being replaced. There's a lot of vitality happening. Uterus too, a lot of cell turnover, multiplication happening, vitality, right? The nerve sense, if you have a damage to the nerve, that's it. It won't regenerate. It's more of a death process which dominates from the upper pole. More of a death process. Here it's more of enlivening in the lower pole. And when we eat food, the food we eat has outside, external, its own inherent etheric forces. And that has to be addressed in the sense that you consume the food, it goes in your stomach and your intestine, it has to be processed. Our higher members, the astral and the ego, they come and then they process it. They put a label of the humanness into it. So if I eat some food, a carrot for example, and then the carrot is getting absorbed, it has to be individualized to me. It cannot be carrot as is. And that food stuff which has this extra human properties has to be divested and then put a stamp, if you will, for which is my own. And this upper currents which come, which are more of the death, the destructive, and then your lower currents from below, which are more enlivening. So these two currents, upper currents and lower currents, they are in a balance in the middle. Each and every 8 billion people have a balance which is somewhere there. It's not fixed. If my balance is more higher because my upper pole currents are very weak, then it cannot digest it. Then what happens is the food stuff which should be broken down and my astral should act on them and put a stamp is not able to do, and so these become foreign bodies and this can become toxic, and this is what Steiner calls hysteria. And so this is what is the background in migraine. The upper currents are weak, so they cannot digest properly. The toxins are being produced and your liver tries to break down, your all the organs try to help, the kidneys and stuff. Sometimes it gets precipitated in the skin, and sooner or later those toxic substances are going to go to the brain. When it is at the weak, when it is vulnerable, stress makes it vulnerable, extreme activity makes it vulnerable, whatever situation when it's vulnerable, then these metabolic things, substances, toxins cannot be metabolized by the brain because it is not the normal place for metabolizing them. And so you get the presence of this astral which is not in a happy place, which causes the pain. Okay, and that is migraine. So you have the nerve sense process which is getting too used up for whatever reason with the weak balance, and then you have this metabolism which is going, and then the toxic products are going, and then the brain is not able to handle it, and on top of that it's getting exhausted, the brain is getting weaker and weaker, it has to be replenished, and the etheric, the food digested stuff which is the living vitality which is there in the abdomen is not able to go and replenish it on time, and so we get headache. It says I can't take it anymore. It starts to withdraw from all painful impression, and then when it is in a limp, in a really given up, then the metabolism is now going to rebound with power. It's going to come with a lot of, as a reflex action, it's going to rebound, and then you have the full-blown migraine attack. Okay, and there are certain situations which makes it worse. Menstrual cycle, for example, when the hormone levels are, the rhythm is off, that's when you get it. So if you were to think about it anthroposophically, if the rhythm is not under, of the menstrual cycle rhythm are not, need to be addressed, then you can see how you can use remedies which addresses that, which can help with your migraine. Or if there is too much stress, your upper pole currents, which are weak already, are being used up for handling the stress, and so you can see how it's even more vulnerable. The special situation of a male is that their upper currents are usually stronger, so the balance is more not up, it's more down, and so they have a little bit of extra in the savings account which can be utilized, and so there are not that many males who have migraines. So it's very common in females, right? I think 85% or so. And in a child, they have so much vitality. You know, if you have an injury, if a child has an injury, they just heal so quickly. They have so much vitality that even though their balance could be much higher, they are able to handle it because the vitality from the child's metabolic system is able to replenish the brain when it is exhausted. So when we give a diagnosis which has meaning from an anthroposophic perspective, it will say the etheric is toasted. I mean, it's not able to help the brain. The upper currents are shy and precarious. And the metabolic limbic system is acting cranky, right? I mean, this is the diagnosis of a migraine. And for some, it could be etheric is more really on its last legs. For some, it could be less. So we by interviewing with and examining the patient, you can come to that understanding. And then what do we do? So if the etheric is toast, we strengthen the etheric. If the upper currents are shy and precarious, we try to gently bring them down. If the metabolic system is acting cranky, we stop pushing it, stop giving it more problems. Don't eat stuff which are not good for you, perhaps. Starving can precipitate whatever it is which precipitates a problem from a metabolic standpoint. Don't push it, right? Bring the spotlight down to its rear end. And then we have the rhythmic system, which keeps the balance, which can still be strengthened so that the toxic substance from the metabolic doesn't overflow into the nerve system. So if we can strengthen it, we can fire up the rhythmic system. If you can support the liver, because that is another stage from the gut to go towards the brain, it has to pass through the liver. If you can support the liver, they can hold off the balance a little bit more. Support the kidney, support the skin, and support the uterus, and support the heart. So if you look at each line, you got 10 multiple remedies. See the combination, you have more than 8 billion possibilities. So each migraine patient is unique, and there are ways to address each and every human with the migraine, which is uniquely different. So I'm going to go with each one and then try to show. I hope it's not too late for you guys. For the etheric, to strengthen it, the first thing that comes to my mind is water, right? I mean, etheric water, it's 60% by weight, but if you take the number of molecules, it's 99%. Whoa, one molecule of glucose has surrounded by 99 molecules of water. It's amazing, for example. So, have to be hydrated. It's easy to take care of it. a 100 kilogram person needs about 3.25 liters a day. If somebody is taking only 1 liter a day, slowly you increase it. Don't give 3.25 immediately. Just weekly increase it by about 250 to 500 ml based on how much they can handle. But they need to drink a lot of water. Of course, for the etheric, you need to have other lifestyle. You got to sleep. Sleep is so important. Get your rest. Be aware of your constitution, which precipitates or causes a migraine. I don't have to multitask and worry about everything all the time. Right? Stabilize the etheric body, yeah. And for the upper currents, which are too much activity happening in the brain, get artistic therapy, right? So all that stress, instead of just being stuck over there, it's being diverted, diffused. Painting, music, modeling, clay modeling. So the sensory overload is processed in the upper pole. And there are remedies which work directly on the upper currents, which is called Bidor, Cephalodoron. It's one of the standard medication. It has quartz, ferrum sulfuricum, honey and vinegar. And the anthroposophic reasoning is the quartz, which is silica, is characterized by its form-giving forces. And normally in the upper pole is the form-giving process, which has been internalized so that it can have soul and spirit activities, right? We talked about it. So from the outside, we are taking those forces and then replenishing them so that it can give those forces to the brain which it's lacking. And this is done by quartz. We strengthen the nerve sense system. Okay? Then the ferrum, the iron in the Bidor, works on the respiratory, the middle system, because you know the blood has iron. It has the F2 plus and F3 plus depending on oxidation and reduction. In the hemoglobin, it changes structure. So the ferrum is more of the respiratory part, and the sulfur stimulates your metabolism. It intensifies the metabolic process. So the combination of iron and sulfur stimulates and then diverts the astral body down, brings it down to the lower part. And so it's harmonizing both respiratory and the metabolic functions. And honey, of course, sweet, sugary honey, calls the forces of your ego. And Steiner gave the indication for this. He made this. He said to think of equisetum arvense, and he said in the natural world this represents the remedy in a way. He says because the equisetum has a lot of silica. He said it is very, very rich in silica, which is very unusual. A lot of plants have silica, but equisetum arvense has a huge ton of it, and it's there in a soluble form, so you can make equisetum tea out of it, right? And if you boil it in water. And this equisetum is bringing that mineral to life. That's how it's a living silica, living quartz. And the metabolic part in the equisetum is there's no flowers. Usually the flowers or the fruit would be the metabolic, but this is all green stems and leaves. And he said it also has sulfur, and that sulfur is representing your metabolic. So if you take equisetum tea and add your barium chloride, you get barium sulfate, for example. So this, Steiner says, is the remedy for migraine, which is derived from the plant equisetum, but it shows the polarity too strongly with the nerve sense because of the quartz, and the metabolic is weaker, and there is no rhythmic, no intermediary So he said that in order for this to become a remedy, we'd have to animalize it. And so what he did was he created this mineral equivalent, which is a threefold organization: quartz for the nerve sense, and then you have the ferrum for the rhythmic, and the sulfur for the metabolic limbic. And this is prescribed in the morning and afternoon usually. It helps prevent, it also helps abort an actual attack of migraine. And usually give it morning and afternoon because for some people the sulfur could keep him awake. Not necessarily, could. And so Bidor is made from Valida. Now the Waller-Meck calls it ferrum quartz. It's the same thing. Now the second one is called Sekale quartz. It works similarly. Here Sekale is like your ergotamine, and that's a poison, and that causes severe hallucinations and stuff. So this is the poison which grows on rye. That's the whole thing is rye, and that's the ergot poison. And if you look at this painting, you'll get an idea as to, this is Grunwald's painting in the altarpiece around 1512 to 16. And here you see Saint Antonius. On the right side, you see he's talking to Saint Peter, and on the left side, he's been poisoned by ergotamine, and he's having all this strange, dangerous hallucinations of these beasts who are attacking him. And that's the poisoning which causes that effect. And above you can see Michael fighting the dragon as well. Anyway, when you come to the Sekale here, it's not dangerous because it's potentized, it's diluted to D5. D5 is completely fine, absolutely none of the side effects. And so use Sekale and as your remedy. And cephalodoron comes. I wanted to show this because I wanted to show Sigvard Elses over there, one of very handful neurologists who is an anthroposophic medicine doctor as well. And he was trained in the US, so at least he speaks English and I can understand. If you speak German, I'll be in trouble. So he told that in his clinic, they can get 50% ferrum quartz. So sometimes this 5% which is available is not strong enough. And they do have a 50% capsules. I was having a discussion with one of the anthroposophic doctors, and he said there is no 50%. And so I brought this in to show him that. And he said, this one, you really have to swallow the capsule, because if the capsule ruptures inside your mouth, the color will stain your teeth. Okay. Go to the next remedy is mustard, which was talked about by Victor Bott in his book, where he says, if you're in deep trouble, you got to get something done immediately. He said, take your mustard pot and then inhale from it. And he said the reasoning was the sulfurous emanations of the mustard, which go to your nose and they cause tearing. You should inhale so strongly it should cause tearing. So you're bringing the astral from inside your nerve, bringing it out, ideally to the lower level. And so you could do mustard foot bath, for example. Right? I will talk about the foot bath in a second. Then bitters. Bitters are used. We got gentian, and you use the dilution one. D1 is dilution one. It's really, really bitter. You could really have to taste the damn bitter in your mouth. And it really grounds the people in their metabolism. It works on strengthening your gut. Your appetite improves, digestion improves. And he says that gentian, especially for psychiatric who are caught up in their own thoughts or emotions. I mean, we're talking about digestion. I mean, whatever we eat is also getting digested. Whatever I hear, I have to digest it. Whatever I see, I have to digest it. Even in my own thoughts, I have to digest them. So digestion is not necessarily only food. So I want us to be open to that concept. Absinthe, vermouth, not your alcoholic. Don't start drinking alcohol, but vermouth and absinthe are also bitters. And there is something called Amara drops, a combination of various herbs, very bitter. And he said that helps as well. We have this plant called Tanacetum parthenium feverfew. It's when you look at it, Western medicine perspective, it's analgesic, anti-inflammatory, blocks inflammatory chemicals. You can do all that, and of course, taken too much can cause liver function tests to be abnormal. The anthroposophic reasoning is it helps your constitution to get that balance back, more to the lower side between the nerve sense and the metabolic. It strengthens the weakness. It's weak because it's not getting digested, so it pulls the astral down. And he says especially in the liver and the gallbladder area. And this is one of those which the stronger, the less dilute, the better. And in clinic RLSM, they get 50% dilution. It says 20 drops at a time, very bitter. And for prevention, you take it twice a day, and during the attack, every 30 minutes. That's not fun. But pain is not fun either. So of course, hepatadorone and chiliodonium, we got to mention it. They are your standard liver and gallbladder strengthening remedies. We all know. Petacitus, also called butterbur, is you can see the leaf. It's big. It grows up to a meter, and it grows in watery, damp places, not marshes, but where there is a lot of water. And you can see there is a lot of etheric forces in it. And these enormous leaves, the anthroposophical reasoning is that their preponderance of the etheric, and metabolism is the etheric, right? Where you have, so it just strengthens the etheric so strongly that it cannot be attacked by the astral. So you give this product initially, ideally, and then it helps. And also helps to, we talked about how there is vasodilation, vasoconstriction, to bring the rhythm in between the two. There is no middle ground. So if it can have the middle ground, so this prevents the direct spasm of the blood vessels. And so it helps the rhythmic as well. Other choices include coffee with lemon juice for those who are not sensitive to coffee, obviously. Coffee strengthens the nerve sense system, and it helps focus, and it blocks your overwhelming metabolic response, right? Because that's overwhelming. And lemon juice, there are two things you could do. You could take it by mouth, and that helps with nausea. Any situation, need not be only migraine. And you can also do a lemon juice compress around your throat, for example. Then there is the gelsemium comp, which can be given in pilules or subcutaneously. Gelsemium supports your nerve sense system. Okay? Especially during menstrual cycle, it helps. Solum, great. Lingonosum comp. It can be given subcutaneous. It has bark of a tree. It gives a protective sheath. Peat is good. If you want to even more stronger, especially when there is too much PTSD, you give amnion D30 as well once a week. They're extremely traumatized, for example. Plumum silicicum D20 is also good. It has silica and also plumum. Both are great for your nerve sense. system, makes it stronger for the upper currents. Silica brings the clarity, and the plumum brings the weight down. There is also stibium, which can be given. There are many other products. I didn't really add them over here. Paraphyllum can be given for etheric. But if you understand that the etheric has to be strengthened, the nerve sense has to be made stronger, bring it down, and the metabolism, which is not able to have a breakdown, we strengthen the metabolism, strengthen the rhythmic system. Man, the diagnosis gives me what I need to do in a treatment, but a Western medical diagnosis, I have to memorize it. I don't know. And people come with their own names as a syndrome or a diagnosis, and it's complicated. It comes down to memorization as opposed to getting a feeling for the illness. External application. I mean Dr. Elsis talked about Japanese mint oil. I'm not sure why only that and not any other mint oil, but same place where you get the cephaly, he said you could apply over there, stimulate the trigeminal nerves, which come away some of the branches. We can do foot baths, really, really cold water on your feet, so cold that you really feel it. And this is what I told my mother when she had a migraine attack, and she did this along with eurythmy, which she did. She didn't want to take any remedies. It was a time when I didn't know much about it, and I just learned about it. And she tried only cold water, and this was around 2016. And just eurythmy, the B exercise, just the two. And after a while, she's like, I forgot I used to get migraine. I mean, she didn't even realize she's not getting migraines, and it was very interesting. Not ice water every time. It's only when you have the severe migraine attack, if possible, to get that. Open the fridge, yeah. Or you can do a ginger compress of your feet, a mustard compress on your legs. You're bringing it down, yeah. You can also do horseradish compress on the neck, around the sinuses, especially if you have a sinus attack which precipitates migraine. Be perfect. You're taking it out of the brain and bringing it outside. Same principle for the lemon juice. And then there is another method they suggested, which is called the pressel massage, where you either massage the leg, not the whole body. You either massage the leg or the hands, never both. And it's a deep massage, and it just helps to anchor the metabolic limbic system. The eurythmy gestures, I'm just going to put these, but eurythmy is like something, it is not a protocol driven, right? I mean, you just don't go. You have to see a therapeutic eurythmist who, I'll show you a case now also about eurythmy, and they have to work with it based on how they're going to assess, and they're going to suggest what is the treatment based on what is off. Rhythmical massage also supports your circulation, supports that manual massage is done in a special way. It strengthens, here you can strengthen the rhythmic system. There is a guided release and rest which can be done. There is an article in 2007 April in Mercury Stab. It talks about this rhythmical massage. This Psi therapy, which probably nobody would know except if you are from Clinic Arlisha, was developed by them, where I'm going to describe it, where you take a deep breath in and then you exhale it with a sigh. You don't hold your breath, and let the breathing flow from the head all the way down to the earth, right? So you take a deep breath. I'm going to stop now, but you continue for a long time. You let the sigh go down and take almost a minute if you can, and then at that moment you focus on your own needs, focus on yourself, be mindful about it. You cannot learn in one day. You got to do it, practice it, and then do every day. That's like a prevention thing. You can do it. Do it with devotion and love. You're basically bringing attention to yourself instead of multitasking and doing all these other things. And by yawning loudly, you're revealing your voice, you're relaxing, you're liberating. And I think you can extend this for the laugh therapy in a group where people have, or where you're singing, where you're liberating the voice as well. Artistic expression, of course, right? There is this Wim Hof method of breathing and staying in ice cold situations. It was done by the Tibetan monks in the past. It was generally built to build up the internal warmth, and it's something you could try if you have the ability to do this, and you need to have real mental strength. Here I want to bring in psychological and muscular tension as a cause of headache, which can precipitate a migraine headache. So this is, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this and you can see it in the recorded. So I had this patient, was in the 40s. She had a graduate degree, postgraduate degree. She was a multitasker. Growing up as a child, she had used antibiotics. There was severe emotional stress. Her dad was a very strong figure in the family, and she was rebelling. She even tried to commit suicide as a teenager, and she smoked. And the very first tobacco, poor thing, probably good. She developed migraine at age 18. It was the first tobacco. And for her, mostly it was unilateral, sometimes bilateral. It progressed and it would be very severe. She would get it up to 5 times a month when she saw me in her 40s. And she was also anemic. Her anemia, the hemoglobin was between 9 and 10.5. We wanted at least Indian women 12.5 to 13. And her size of the red blood cell was in her 70s, and that should be ideally, to me at least, 85 to 90. And she had the skin dermatitis, but her headache was the main thing. She had tried some medication, she just couldn't handle the side effects. She absolutely said no to any medication. Even when I tried to suggest iron, she would say absolutely no, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. So it was really a difficult thing. So I really had to understand her, know her constitution, understand her, and I worked with her. We tried Bidor for 7 weeks, and then 5 weeks of hepatodorone and Coleodone. So I took a break from Bidor, and then at that time I had learned this bee and reverse walking for helping with digestion, and so I introduced that to her. And whenever there was a pain, she would take more Bidor tablets, right? I mean, up to 20, 24 tablets. I told her, go to max 30, don't go more at a time. And she did that. And the improvement was happening. And at 6 months, there was a marked improvement. And then I lost contact. And then 3 years later, which was a month ago, I reached out, and she's 85% compliant. I mean, she's taking Bidor, and her last migraine was 2 months ago, and she said it's just once a day, it's easily manageable. Her diet is not the best, the stress is very high, so she's still taking Bidor. And I think for many people, a year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years of Bidor is sufficient, as long as you're able to do the other things to prevent the precipitation. Since Bidor also has iron, and I think that's why our hemoglobin improved as well. And because the foreign bodies are not going to the skin and causing dermatitis, I believe her skin dermatitis also improved. Of course, she started using steroid cream, which throws a wrench in that theory. And then this is another case by Dr. Solner in Mercury-Stapp, 2016. He's talking about a young girl who is a 10-year-old with family history of severe migraine, both mom and dad, and they're professional musicians and they're very choleric, very type A, right? And the whole family is music oriented, and they want her to be music. She was going to a music oriented school, um, and then in his case report, he says she had large, striking eyes. She loved sweets, and she used to have frequent respiratory infections. And so she was trying all sorts of anthroposophic remedies, but it was not working for her. Belladonna was D12, and so they had given up, and they were taking, along with anthroposophic remedies, they were taking Western medicine remedies, which is what a lot of people do, and I'm guilty of it too. But it's not like it is anthroposophic versus and against Western medicine. We work both. So he suggested pancreas meteoricin. It's a meteoric ion and a pancreas combination. And he said by mouth in the morning. And then he increased belladonna to D30. D30, the difference between, as you increase the potency towards D30, it's working more towards in the nerve, in the upper nerve cells. If you have D5, D6, it's more on your metabolic. Okay. So his reasoning is the pancreas meteorism strengthens the intervention of the ego in the digestive process. And I think the fact that she was eating sweets made him think of it. Perhaps he felt that the digestion had to be strengthened. And then the belladonna dampens an overactivity of the sensory organization in the upper human being, especially in the area of the sense organs and the nervous system. And it promotes psychological individualization, right? And so this stronger embodiment of the astral body was what was needed for her, which is to be perceived as less intrusive. Okay. Right, so that is that case. You can read up on it in that Mercurus tab, which is the article. This is the other one from Mercurus tab again, 2017. This is a therapeutic eurythmy. So what happened here was this 45-year-old female, for about 10 years, she had migraine attacks twice a month. And she tried different therapies and it wouldn't work. And what the eurythmy therapist did was she asked her to do ERO, use the copper balls, and there is anapest treatment with anapest activity where you do quick, slow, right? And then you walk in a certain way, and then it's a quick, slow pace, and then that's called anapest. And then you can talk to a therapeutic eurythmist, and he or she will tell you. And then she saw the threefold walking, and based on that, she made these observations that the patient would not have solid. I'm showing this because I want you to see how a therapeutic eurythmist can diagnose, and they come to the similar sort of diagnosis which anthroposophic doctor would do. So she did not have solid foot contact. She placed her gestures too high with tense shoulders, and so on. You can read it later. In the interest of time, I'm going to run through a little bit. And she gave her remedies, treatments of the different therapeutic eurythmy gestures twice a week. I'm just going to focus on the last one. Twice a week for 12 weeks. And she told her to do it on her own, at home. And this, with the therapeutic eurythmist, was done in the 5-month period with breaks in between, right? And then, I'm just going to say what the patient's experience was. She described the therapy as helping her come back into her body and experience herself as more grounded and present. She reported improved sleep, greater emotional stability, and an increased capacity to cope with stress. Particularly noteworthy was her description of a new relationship to her headaches. Instead of experiencing them as an unpredictable external force, she felt she had gained inner tools to respond to emerging imbalance. And this is another 1993 in the Journal of Anthroposophic Medicine, 28-year-old man with migraine. For him, we just go to the red thing where when they did either the medicine or eurythmy therapy alone, it was not sufficient. Only with the combination of the two, for a year, they did the treatment, and then follow-up year was 5 years later, and he had no more migraine, right? So it was a combination, which is very important for us. We have to work with the therapeutic eurythmist, period. And this is a big article published 2010. They did 45. They took 45 adults with migraine in Germany, where it was from different areas. So it's not just one doctor. There were 30 doctors and 30 alternate, in the sense that eurythmist or art therapist or rhythmical massage therapist who participated in this study, and they measured the symptoms and the quality of life. And the anthroposophic medication was given only in 67% of the people. Not everybody took it. Eurythmy was 38%, art was 18%, rhythmic massage was 13%. And the first 6 months, the usage of conventional medicine during acute attack was half the people used it, and for prophylaxis only 14%. They kind of stopped it. So it worked for them. Yeah. So I'd like to end by quoting Steiner and Novalis here, where he says, a healthy organism is in balance with itself and with all the different dynamics and impulses that create and differentiate it, combining all parts in a harmonious whole. It is also in balance with the world that surrounds it. A diseased organism has the same dynamics, but they are in imbalance or crisis mode. A new equilibrium is needed. The internal imbalance creates the disposition to disease, and the outer world provides secondary factors. I like Novalis's description of disease. Disease is a musical problem, a dissonance that must not be allowed to return to the harmony that existed before, but must be resolved into the harmony that is to follow. An illness properly gone through will lead to a better health. So with that, I will stop sharing, and if you have any comments or questions, or if it's too much, we could just pause for now and then live with it. And you can always email me the questions. I can answer them, maybe. I think you can unmute yourselves.
Thank you, Vinay. That was excellent.
Hey, Celia. Thank you.
This is being recorded. Is it going to be shared, or is it for you? Or
I'll send you the recording.
okay, thank you so much. This is like going to a doctor.
Vinay is a doctor.
I think we can stop recording now, huh?
Hello,
Yes,
good morning,
because
Vinay.